Yes, I made a big decision. I gave it all to Christ. I just had to get it right. He means so much to me. Now I know why he's testing me.
Welcome to the He Loves Me, He Loves Me Not podcast with Barbara Pettis, founder and CEO of Better Place Ministries. Barbara's passion for this cause is driven by her own personal experiences with domestic abuse in both her childhood and as an adult. She is committed to helping others achieve their goals of excellence and has devoted numerous hours to educate and empower individuals that are affected by domestic violence. Her enthusiasm for this cause is infectious, and it represents her personal zeal in life. And now, here's your host, Barbara Pettis.
All right. Good evening, you guys. It is another Tuesday, and we are here together. I want to thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. You could be doing a bunch of other things, but the fact that you decided to spend this time with me, you have no idea how much that means to me. And well, I'm excited about our show today. We have another Power Pack show. And I want to thank you guys. Our Facebook page, Better Place Ministries, we are getting a lot of likes. I appreciate that. You guys keep sharing, keep liking the page. We are trying to get as many friends as we can. So keep doing what you're doing. Also, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to that, Better Place Ministries. And if you want to see one of the shows, we've been doing this since June of this year. And if you want to see one of the shows, you can go to our YouTube channel, Better Place Ministries, and all the shows are there. So you can binge watch like you do, Power or Grey's Anatomy, whatever it is, you can binge watch. He Loves Me, He Loves Me Not. And also, I want to invite you guys to go to our website, www.bpministries.org. We are still looking for donors, so please become a monthly donor or a one-time donor. And, the funds that we get, as you guys know, are tax deductible because we are a nonprofit organization. And those funds will go towards a house, Gladys House, a safe house, because you guys know that my ultimate goal is to be able to house women and children. So become a monthly donor or a one-time donor. Whatever you do, we appreciate. You can follow us on Instagram and you can follow us on Twitter. And you know that every month we give away a gift. All you have to do is share the podcast with 3 people, and you may be the recipient of a very nice gift. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started because I can't wait to talk to my special guest today. He is Dr. Michael Sneed. Dr. Michael D. Sneed was born and raised in South Dallas, the oldest of 7 siblings. He is a graduate of Skyline High School and holds a doctorate of theology degree. He is overwhelmingly, I love this part, you guys, listen to this. He is overwhelmingly, extremely, and happily joined at the rib to his friend, his huckleberry and wife of 35 plus years, Pastor First Lady Dorothy Sneed. He is a retired police sergeant for the Dallas Police Department after 28 plus years of service. Dr. Sneed has been preaching the gospel for 40 plus years and the senior pastor of Loving Fellowship Baptist Church there in DeSoto, Texas for over 20 years. He has been a chaplain with Victims Relief Ministries, a ministry that partners with churches, individuals, corporations, and others to provide help, hope, and comfort to victims of crime, disaster, and terrorism. He was the recipient of the Dallas Police Department's Shining Star Award, which is given to honor individuals for ethical conduct and individual acts, such as acts of kindness, going beyond the call of duty, or other actions which bring favorable recognition to the Dallas Police Department. He sits on the steering committee for the African American Domestic Violence Council. We both sit on that committee together. That's where I met him, which was established to address the high rate of domestic violence homicides among African American women in Dallas County. Dr. Sneed's church, Loving Fellowship, recognizes Domestic Violence Awareness Month with the distribution of information to the congregation regarding domestic violence. Every church should be doing that. They hold annually Fill a Bag for my sister, and I love this, and I told him I'm going to steal this and take it to my church, in which gently used purses are filled with personal items and donated for new clients coming to the Family Place shelter. They also receive annual donations of coats, sweaters, jackets, gloves, and scarves for those families. Dr. Sneed, welcome to He Loves Me Not. Let me tell you guys this part too about Dr. Sneed and his wife, First Lady Dorothy. They are raising 4, not 1, but 4 great grandchildren. Get the ages 6, 7, 9, and 10. I will be pulling my hair out. Dr. Sneed, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Look, I don't pull my hair out. I just cut it so you don't see it fall out.
I tell you, I am so glad that you're here with me, and I really don't know where to start this conversation because we're just going to have a conversation. I don't know if I want to start with your police background or your pastorate background. I just don't know where to start with this one, and that's a first for me. So let's start with the policing. How about that? Let's start with that. So what I would like for you to do is tell us, what you saw and how you handled it and, how often it was.
Well, I started in 1983 when I owned the Dallas Police Department, and I hit the street in '84. And you see the world differently when you're just a person living in the neighborhood. Once I became a police officer, you start seeing the I guess you could say the underbelly of what goes on, because the only reason you call the police is when something goes wrong. And so in doing that, I saw how people really treated other people, and it really kind of pressed home the point during calls that we had domestic violence on, because believe it or not, back in the day, we were told that we didn't get involved in domestic disputes. And that was, we just did not get involved. If it wasn't criminal, that's way before they even labeled it domestic violence. It was just a disturbance call. And we would go there, we would listen, and we would determine, our biggest thing was determine if there was a crime committed by the standards that we were trained under. And I can tell you this, 8 times out of 10, by the standards that we were trained on, it was not. And so a lot of times we don't get involved in it. We would document the call, in our notebooks, or we would make a small report, and we go on to the next call.
So wait a minute. So you guys would go on these calls and leave the perpetrator there with the victim?
If there was no determination, if there was a crime committed, because now you can understand something, we're talking about mid 80s,
okay,
or mid 80s, mid to late 80s,
okay.
And so we were not trained as police officers to deal with domestic violence.
Okay,
it's just something that we just did not do, and so. If there was not a crime, and you learn later on as an officer, because they started actually, I guess you can say, interjecting those type of calls and how to deal with those type of calls when domestic violence was on the rise. Mm-hmm. Then they started the training. But when I was a rookie, there was a time we did not deal with too many domestic violence calls. So we had to determine whether or not that it was a crime committed. If there was no physical evidence that an assault, and even in that, basically what you did was you made the party leave. Wow. And I know that you find that hard to believe in this day and age, but we're talking about early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s. it really didn't come about as far as the training for the officers on the street. It really didn't come about until late 89, 90, 91. Those things didn't come about until right about late 80s. So we just some of the things that we just did not do as police officers, and a lot of officers during that time felt like we wasn't required to do. We felt, a lot of them felt like, let them handle it in court, let them figure it out. And so until about maybe the 88, 89, like I said, late 90s, that's when the training started coming in, because domestic violence is on the rise. There was a push, a call for it. There was grassroots effort on the local level and the national level to deal with this issue. And so the training for the police officers on the street, because progress moves slow.
Right.
And we didn't get that training until almost right before I got promoted, which was in 89 as a sergeant. Actually, it was 89 as a sergeant, and went back into the field as a supervisor. And then that's when you went to those calls, and you could handle a little bit better. But even in that, what was the answer for it? The answer for at that time, you arrest both parties. Especially if there was physical evidence, there was a fight, something like that. So you end up arresting both parties, which what it does, it victimized the victim
All
a second
over
time.
again. Exactly. That's so crazy to me. And I know that, domestic violence wasn't on the forefront back in those days, because I was, that's when I was really deep into, being abused. But I'm just trying to figure out what was the point in calling the police if nothing was going to be done. If you walked up on a chick that's had a black eye or a bloody nose, and all you're gonna do is tell a guy to leave. That's just crazy.
Now here's the crazy part. If it was a evidence of a physical assault, okay, yeah, we would do something. But if there was mutual combatants, or say for instance, if she defended herself and he got some scratches, then the answer was, well, we got two assaults, so we arrest them both, which really didn't solve the problem.
Did not.
It really didn't even scratch the surface. So and then in the defense of being an officer at the time, we were not prepared as police officers to deal with domestic issues. We really were not. Our biggest thing was we fighting criminal crime, and so that was not at the forefront of some of these cities and these departments during those times. Now, what happens is we left a lot of things undone, and we left a lot of victims right back in the same place where they were before they called us.
Yes, because even though it wasn't in the forefront back then, women were still getting killed now.
Exactly.
So they were still getting killed. And I'm looking, Shalonda, I see you on here. I try to watch Facebook as well to see if we have posts. And she's saying, what about verbal emotional abuse? That was a non-threatening offense. I'm sure, Dr. Sneed, right? I mean, that was they were just cussing each other out, pretty much. Yeah.
And that was the sad part, because as the training got more prevalent throughout the departments, throughout police departments, then we were trained to look for those things. Because I'm telling you, the mindset of law enforcement, and I can only speak for me as an officer and the department that I was in, the mindset was something we just didn't handle. And so if there wasn't and I repeat again, if there wasn't evidence of a physical assault, we didn't deal with it. And that was the sad part. Now, in hindsight, yeah, we should have. But as far as the department was concerned, and like I said, you are talking about late 80s. And that was not on the radar. It wasn't until it became a national, and I call it a pandemic. When it became a national pandemic, then we started getting the training, and they started allocating money for the training, and then because we were trained. I mean, every time we went to what they call in-service training, that was part of the training every time we went. And so dealing with it on the local level, on the grassroots level, as an officer on the street, we got the training that we needed, to at the very least make a decision, to do something about it. Now, the physical, emotional, those things like that, those things came later. But on the surface, in the late '80s, we wasn't prepared for it. We were not.
So, what do you think about the way that it's handled now through the police? What do you think? I mean, is it adequate enough training now? Is there more training to be done? I know, and I know that the police department has nothing to do with the laws, but I'm just so frustrated with the laws that really don't protect victims, in my opinion, because they'll arrest a guy, he'll get out on bond, and he'll go back and finish what he started.
Exactly. It's kind of a two-headed monster. One, you have the officers that were on the street that would deal with it, and we deal with it at that level, and so you can only do so much at that level. Problem is that next level, the laws that were on the books, you're sure we make the arrest, sure we put him in jail, sure we make the charge and everything, and then he gets out, and 2 days, or if not that evening, comes back like you said and finish the job. So we can only do so much on one level, and then it takes legislation. It takes those that actually write and put the laws on the books to do the next. Now, for me, being actually experiencing that and dealing with it right now, I say on the street level officer, they're doing what they can. I think the laws need to be a little bit more, as you can say, stringent.
Yes.
Yeah, from where they are now. Because even with it now, it's better than what it was, but it can be so much more better than what it is.
Yes, I was really disappointed. Because I started a petition to take to Congress and was asking for signatures, and nobody wants to get involved, not even sign their name. And I was so disappointed in that, because I truly feel like that we can make a difference if we come together, but nobody wanted to just sign your name saying that laws need to be better. And so that I was really, I still am real disappointed in the fact that the signatures are not coming as swift as I think they should come.
It's just like anything else. You only get involved until when it comes to your front door. That seems to be the thing.
Yes.
You're not involved in anything on a national level until it hits you at the local level. I think that's where a lot of the because domestic violence back during those times, it really didn't get big until people started noticing, let's say, entertainers, politicians, other police officers, those that have some social status, until it became big, became a problem for them. It was always, that's just their problem.
You're right. When the fact of the matter is, it's all of our problem.
Exactly.
It affects everybody. A couple of my guests, we would always say that when we were growing up, we would say whatever goes on in this house stays in this house, but it doesn't stay in the house. It does not stay in the house.
That is the other problem, because remember I said it was kind of two things going on. When you get there as an officer and you talk to, what's going on, you couldn't get enough of the information, and I kind of blame that on the situation as it is. Like you said, whatever goes on in this house stays in this house. And so with that mentality, the law is very black and white in certain areas, and I remember as an officer trying to ask the questions to get a victim of domestic violence to answer the questions in the affirmative.
Right.
Did he put his hands on you? I couldn't say, you couldn't say certain things
Right.
during that time.
Right.
Now you can say, did he hit you? And then but if she didn't give the right answers to certain questions, then you have that frustration as well. Because as a male and as an officer, especially as a black male, I'm looking at what's going on. I'm seeing him and I'm seeing her. And, all is, okay, I will snot block this joker if she give me the word.
Exactly. That part. Yes.
That part right there. So, come on, give me the okay.
Yes.
And it was more or less well, and then when you got the well, it probably would go downhill from there. That was the other frustrating part. You couldn't get and I understand it's fear. I understand they're thinking about what I'm gonna do, and this joker supporting me and my kids, which by the way, 4 of the 6 are not his. So and those are the things that I have to deal with. And so and I'm sorry, I was raised by my grandmother. I have a sister.
Yeah.
I'm married. I have daughters.
Yeah.
And I was raised, if you got a daughter, you wouldn't want that to happen to any female in your family.
Exactly.
And all I needed was, during that time when I was on the street, all I needed was the look or the word.
Just a nod,
Just a nod. And a lot
nod.
of times, and that was the sad part for me. That was the frustrating part for me. A lot of times you didn't get it.
Yeah.
You didn't get it. And so a lot of officers took it upon themselves. They would just listen for the radio for any call that come out of that location. I used to have a little book that I would write the addresses.
Okay.
And I would put FF Family Fight by the address. That way I knew, and I had his name and I had her name. And so if I heard a call come out at the location, I would take the call.
Okay.
Or jump somebody for the call, knowing that this happens every weekend, or this happens every 30 days, or every 15 days when that check hit.
Right. And I think now there is a even bigger reluctancy to call the police because of what we see happening global. I think that the victim wants the person out of the house, but you're afraid to call the police because you don't know if they're going to come with guns pulled and just start shooting. So I think that here lately there is a deeper reluctancy to call the police because you don't know if you're going to get killed, he going to get killed, or just what's going to happen. And that's unfortunate.
After being in policing so long, and seeing what's happening on the streets so long to those that look like me, tell you the truth about it, I'll be reluctant too. Now I'm a retired police officer, and when I see a squad car in the back of me and those lights come on, the back of my hair stands up. That I was black before I was an officer.
Yes.
So I understand the reluctancy, but I'm like, okay, nothing's going to change if I do nothing. So do something.
Right.
Do something. And I think that was the frustration as an officer that I had, and even as a sergeant. When I was supervising officers.
Okay.
You would tell them, Sarge, this is what we got. And a lot of times, we used to have the leeway to make those decisions. Okay. Go ahead, hook him and book him. Just go ahead and do what you got to do, and we'll sort it out. At least we get them out of the house, for now. And then they started giving us information. You can pass these things along, because on that level, that's all we could do on that level.
Okay.
Remember I told you we could do our part, and they equipped us on our part to make an arrest.
Right.
The problem was what came after the arrest.
Right. Now, what happened? What would happen, say, if the police got a call to go on a wellness check? Maybe the wife or girlfriend or whatever haven't showed up at the family's house for a couple of days, or showed up on her job for a couple of days, and the police is called to go do a wellness check. And once you get there, you realize that there has been some some physical violence and she's beat up or being imprisoned in her home. And what happens in that scenario?
Every department, every police department is different. They not only are they're following the laws of the land, but they have their own SOP, standard operating procedure, that they are trained to follow in certain instances. What the misconception is with just the average citizen is that we all follow the same procedures, and we do not. We all follow the same laws, but the procedures to enforce the law are sometimes different between departments. If that makes sense.
Okay. See, I'm one of those people that thought, hey, y'all, they're police. They follow the same thing, so it's different. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
We all follow the same laws,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as the procedure to follow the law is different.
Okay.
Here's a classic example. Dallas, the city of Dallas, has 5 police agencies in it.
Okay.
You have the Dallas Police Department. You have the Dallas Sheriff's Department, which is the county. You have the municipal police, which is the county. You have the ones that police city facilities. You have the constable's office.
Mm-hmm.
That's another police agency, and then you have the school police. Okay, 5 separate agencies, and I guarantee you, they don't all follow the same procedures.
Wow.
They just don't. And so you're thinking they're all police officers, they all have uniforms, no, we don't. We follow the same laws, but our procedures to follow the law were different.
Okay.
And so there are procedural things that they have to do whenever they go there. Like you were talking about the wellness check.
Mm-hmm.
I just recently was involved with one of my members of my church that she was sad to say she was a victim of domestic violence that didn't turn out well.
Oh,
And
wow.
the police went there to her home as a wellness check, and the male the husband was there. But what does he tell them? Nothing's going on. Get off my porch. Wouldn't even open the door. And so in those cases, procedurally, they could not do anything. They had to wait, get a warrant, come back with the warrant, go through. The warrant takes about maybe anywhere between 24 to 48 hours to get, depending on the county, because this is a whole different county. And that's the other thing too. If you have 2 different counties, the 2 counties don't follow the same procedural way to do it.
See, that's crazy to me. I'm sorry. That's just crazy to me. Now, this lady was in her home in distress, and they could do nothing because he was saying nothing was going on. That's crazy to me.
He wouldn't open the door, wouldn't volunteer to open the door, wouldn't do it. And so at that point, they couldn't kick the door in and go in because they had no probable cause. So they have no probable cause, even though it's a wellness check. All they could do was what they did. They filed a report. They made a report. They made the report very, very detailed, but they had to wait for a warrant based upon the information they got from other people concerning her well-being.
Wow.
And so procedurally, they could not go in there.
Wow. We have a question.
So 2 days later, she's gone.
So he killed her.
Yes.
Jeez.
I can't give, as far as the detail part, I can't go into that, but that's the gist of it.
Right.
So she's gone.
Right. We have a question from my aunt on Facebook, Dr. Ingram. She says she needs clarification. She says, I understand that the police can now proceed with charges even if the victim changes their mind. Please tell me that's true.
That is true. That is true. And here's the thing. If there's evidence that there's been a domestic violence, we can arrest and charge them with it. Now it's up to, once we make the arrest and the charges are filed. Well, actually, because all we do is make the arrest. That's what the police officer did. We made the arrest.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the charges stick, that's up to the district attorney. See, now you're talking about another branch. We're one branch. We do this on this
Right,
part,
right,
and then the district attorneys do the other part.
right. And
And so if they file charges, we file the charge, and the district attorney says, okay, fine, you know. And she said, well, you know, he really didn't mean it. Sorry, we're still going to do that.
yes, yes. Another thing that I think is crazy, and then I want to flip to the pastoral side of it. But another thing that I think is crazy is they allow these jokers to make bail and they set bonds. I feel like they should have just in jail, no bail. You're in jail, but they allow them to make bail, and that knowing, especially if they are repeat offenders. You know, because
There is a history. Yeah.
yes,
I believe that too. If there is a history of domestic violence, and you look at their track record, or you look at their record, and for that matter, any violence, it doesn't have to be domestic violence. It's always an assault,
yes,
an aggravated assault, attempted this. You know, it should be okay. There is a pattern here.
yes,
But if you're talking about suspect number 5,000 in a 10,000 case load for the number of, then a lot of times that stuff will get pushed aside, and then the individual falls through the cracks.
yes, yes.
Oh, I feel your frustration.
Okay, because we have these discussions in our council meetings. So yeah,
Yes, I feel your frustration.
So I want to flip now to, and thank you for the insight on policing. I want to flip to the Christian community, because I feel like every church, every pastor, every elder, every leader of a church should be in their pulpits talking about domestic violence. And I am surprised I found out that not a whole lot of pastors do it. Not a whole lot of pastors get, in the pulpit and talk about this thing. And I don't understand that.
I have been a pastor 20 plus years. I was assistant pastor, 10 years, almost 10 years before that. And I wasn't one of those that grew up in the church and knew all the little things that had gone on that people talk about. So I believe God allowed me to be a police officer first, and then became a pastor.
Okay.
Because there's nothing that I have seen in church from church people that I haven't seen on the street as an officer. I believe God prepared me to deal with that. So I'm a little bit more proactive as far as domestic violence in the church. I'm a little bit more proactive. I don't, you can't come tell me, well, so-and-so, he's a good man. He just probably had a bad day. No, you can't tell me that. You can't come to me and say, well, they pay a lot of tithes to the, no, you can't tell me that.
Yes.
You can't tell me, because I've seen it on that end, on the other end, and those things don't matter to me. I'm like this. If a man is not laying hands on you to bless you, he don't need to lay hands on you.
Exactly.
That's just me. But
exactly.
Teresa has told me a lot. Teresa Little has told me a lot of times, you're not the typical pastor.
Yeah, no, Dr. Sneed, you're not the typical pastor. You are not.
So
you are not.
When it comes to those type of things, and I tell the church all the time, first of all, you will be the next sermon. If I can preach on everything else, preaching on that should be no problem.
Yes.
No problem.
Yes.
I'm sorry. What I have found is a lot of churches, a lot of pastors do not. They just don't.
They just don't. And I feel like just like police officers and different people go through training for domestic violence and how to handle it and what to do. Church leaders need to do the same thing, because you could have a pastor or a church leader or whatever give the wrong information. You know, I've heard several times where the pastor has told the victim, well, what are you doing? You know, can you make sure his dinner is cooked when he gets home, and this, that, and all this foolishness. So there's some training that needs to take place in pastoral leadership, and there needs to be that the victim needs to feel safe to go to the pastor and talk and say, hey, he's hitting me or he's doing whatever, and he be held accountable. I don't care if he's the elder or, as you said, the biggest church donor. I don't care. He needs to be held accountable. And if that means having him arrested, then so be it.
Barbara, you would be surprised. No, you wouldn't. I guess you would. No, you would be surprised how much domestic violence goes on inside the church body. Because the same people that I have dealt with on the street go to somebody's church.
Yes.
They go to somebody's church. And I think that's the reason why God allowed me to be, I guess, the way I am. Because I'm sorry, if I hear about it, we're going to deal with it. And if I hear about something that goes on, we're calling the police, we're getting her help, we're doing all those things, because I understand from that different perspective as a police officer the effects it has not only on, I mean, let's just go a little larger. What effects it has on the community, and as well as the family, as well as the individual.
Yes.
So I know what the effects are, but you'd be surprised that it goes on in the church, and every church is different. Is a time it governs itself differently from the church that's right next door, even though they both may have Methodist or Baptist or Presbyterian on the side. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Every church is different, and every pastor is different. You would think that, okay, we will all be trained. There's no training, right, for pastors, and if it is, I'd be hard pressed to find a handful that would actually take it. But there's no training like the police officers, where we had to go to training. That was required of us. We had to take training every year, and it was always in service training. You just didn't be on the department for 5 years and never go back and train. No, you were trained. You had to go. You were required to have training. Pastors are not required to have training, because that pastor usually either started his own church and it just grew, or if they're part of an organization, let's say, for instance, if they're the Methodists, Methodists have their organization. There's several different branches. There's several different regions. There's several different, and it goes on and on and on. Each church is autonomous. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of them don't require them to go, because I may have found, out of the group that I know, may have found one, maybe two, okay, let me be generous, maybe 3 or 4 pastors that even may have had the training through another job they have, or even acknowledge the fact that they need training.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just like we have ministerial training for whatever, women's ministry or men's ministry or whatever, there should be a required training for church leadership. I don't know who I had on the show, but I was telling them that one church I was trying to get in, I was talking to the pastor and I was telling him about my organization, what I did. And, I was like, you need to let me come to your church and do a workshop on domestic violence. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to put you on the calendar. I'm going to give you a call. And that call never came. And every time I saw him, I'm like, hey, I'm waiting on you to call. What's going on? I need to get in your church. And so, that went on for a while. And then his wife finally spoke up. He was abusing her. I'm like, oh, okay. That's why you didn't want me in your church, because you were the abuser. and I was going to be in your pulpit talking about you, you know? So I never did get there. And what I try to get people to understand, people are sitting in the pulpit, and I'm sorry, in the congregation every single weekend. I'm a 7-day Adventist, so I go to church on Saturday. Yeah. What's in the pulpit too, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know.
There wasn't no slip of the lip. No, you were right. Sitting in the pulpit.
Yeah, but people are sitting in church. That woman may have just been abused on the way to church.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, but then you have to put this mask on, walk in church, smile, you know, how you doing? Highly blessed and favored, and dying on the inside. I'm sorry.
I was also part of the. It's called the AIMS program. It's a business that's run by one of my dear friends, Anthony Williams. He was my lieutenant when I was on department, and he retired a little bit after I did, and he started his own company that trains churches in church safety. And one of the components that he had, I think it's American Institute for Management Services, and he deals with church safety. And one of the components that he had in that training, actually, and it was a great block of instruction, is domestic violence in the church, because he knows is so prevalent. Mm-hmm. And so I had being at the start of his company, I had several deacons, my children's ministry, a couple of directors in the children's ministry, a couple of deacons, a couple of folks, guys that were on our security team, myself. Mm-hmm. And we had people that was part of the women's ministry. They took that course. You know, I mean, we paid for it. We sent them through. We had maybe 13, 14 people that were trained, took the whole entire training. And because I want to make sure if something had to be dealt with and I couldn't be there, someone else was trained to deal with it.
Yes.
So I took them through. I need to take some more through, but then COVID hit, and we all know what happened with that. Right. All that did was lock the victims in the jail cell with the suspects. Yes. You know, with the offenders. So, and so we took that training. You would be surprised that it's offered. He offered it, and it's probably about as most reasonable as far as the cost. Mm-hmm. Of any other ones that training that I have seen. Mm-hmm. Most of them deal with gun violence in the church, and they're quick to have guns in the church. But as far as that component sold me because I had seen it as an officer. He knows, we talked about it, we've gone to calls. That component of it sold me enough to say, okay, I need people in my church that could recognize and know. And he had scenarios and we role play and the things that went on as far as domestic violence. Mm-hmm. He had a nice segment, and it's a shame there was only one segment, but it was a segment that I hadn't seen elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. I have a good friend that is a retired Fort Worth detective. He goes around and he does training as well. And I was trying to see how this COVID situation was going to pan out. But, I need to get in touch with him because that needs to be a training taking place at my church. You're right. We have gun control, gun training and all of that. And I say it jokingly, but I always say if somebody came up in the church that I attend trying to do something, it's going to be like, OK Corral up in there because every other person got a gun, sitting up in our church. So, but this training is necessary. The awareness is necessary. It needs to be talked about. And something needs to be done. Know the signs. If nothing, to know the signs.
Know the signs.
I
believe the reason why that it's not, I guess you say, more talked about from a standpoint, and I've seen it from both standpoints. is the fact that nobody want to get in nobody else's business. Oh, that's their business. I got my own issues. But the problem is, you sit down in this pew next to this individual every Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and you see. Now, here's the crazy part: the women know it because women will talk.
Right.
The problem is, and I'm saying this for myself personally. The problem that I see is the men.
Yes. Yes. They won't hold that guy
They
accountable.
won't hold. You're absolutely right. They will not hold brother so and so, deacon
Yes.
so and so, minister so and so, pastor so and so
Right.
accountable
Right.
for what they're doing.
Right.
Because we don't want to get. That's another man. We're so big to talk about being heads of house and being kings of our house, but to me personally, I can't see you in a position of authority if you're abusing the subjects.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
I
right.
can't. To me, I was raised by my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sorry. She used to tell me a man that hits a woman is
He's
not
a
a man.
he's a coward. He's point blank. Period.
He was a coward. My grandmother, God rest her soul. He's a coward. She was a single mother. She raised my dad and all five of the siblings at the time.
Mm-hmm.
She raised us all.
Yeah.
And so, strong black woman.
Yeah.
And she said, a man that puts his hands on a woman is not a man. He's a coward. I call him a backwards man. The reason I call him a backwards man, if you look at the word man spelled backwards, it's N-A-M, not a man.
Oh, I like that, Dr. Sneed.
He's a backwards man.
I like that. I like that. But yeah, because these women are sitting in the pews and they're crying and people are thinking, oh, she's just filled with the spirit, or, that's the song is speaking to her. That woman is in pain. She's hurting.
Whenever I preach, I just don't preach on Sundays, teach on Wednesdays, and then I'm done with the church for the week.
Yeah.
If an individual calls themselves a pastor, and I can't just say for anybody specific, but if an individual calls themselves a pastor, and they don't, at the very least, know the family dynamic of the people that sit in their pews, then to me, who are you pastoring?
That's a problem. Yes.
Are you pastoring only those that tithes and offering is substantial? Are you pastoring only those people that agree with you? Are you pastoring the ones that that you get along with? Because there's three people in the church that I remember one of my former pastors told me this. There's three people in the church you have to deal with as a pastor. Those that love you to death will do anything for you. Those that are kind of indifferent, it can go either way, depending on how they feel at that time. And those that hate your guts and still there. You got to pastor all three.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't pastor the ones that are just agreeable.
Right.
Then you just have a bunch of yes people.
Right.
The ones that'll go either way, well, when they're good, you're fine with them. When they're not, you're not. And the ones that really can't stand you, but for some reason God still have them there, you have to pastor them as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Sneed, we are running out of time. We will get to tell about our conversation. I know time. I get frustrated every Tuesday because the time goes by so fast. But I
Which
can't.
means you have to have me on again.
Yeah, I can't wait to our next council meeting so we can tell the council about this conversation.
Teresa Lil and I, we've had this conversation along with my wife. My wife is a domestic violence survivor. Wasn't me.
Yeah.
Put that disclaimer in there. It was not me. I love my queen.
Yeah.
Like I said, she my huckleberry.
Yeah, I love that.
And so she understands, and that's where a lot of our ministry, especially the women's ministry, have really put forth the effort to support the family place, to do those little things that we can do, collecting bags and purses and coats and those things of that nature, and shoes. My wife is instrumental in those things, and I support her 100%. And she's now we have a director and assistant director. She's now been elevated as the women's pastor, because that's what she do. She pastors women.
Okay.
There are some things that a woman will tell her that they won't necessarily talk to me about.
Right. You're absolutely right. All right. Well, hang out. Don't go anywhere. Hang out.
Not a problem.
All right, you guys. This has been very informative for me. I don't know about you guys, but it's been very, very informative for me. And as always, listen, if you are in a domestic violence situation, or you know someone, if it's a friend, a neighbor, a relative that is dealing with some type of domestic abuse, please call 911. If you live in a house or apartment or whatever, and you hear commotion going on next door, you don't even have to go knock on the door. Just call 911. You could be saving that woman's life. Just dial 911. Then if you're seeking help, you can always go to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Call that number, 800-799-7233. We have local institutions. You guys have heard us just today mention the Family Place a few times. Call the hotline, 214-941-1991. Genesis Women's Shelter, 214-946-4357. One Safe Place of Tarrant County, 817-916-4323. Safe Haven of Tarrant County, 877-701-7233. We together, we can make a difference. I truly believe that. Together we can make a difference. We might not be able to save everybody, but if we get one, we've done something. I love you guys. If nobody's told you today, I love you. Be safe. I'll see you again next Tuesday.
I just came to testify today to let you know that no matter where you are and no matter where you've been, that God can change you because He changed me. This is my testimony. There's been a change in me, a wonderful change in me. There's been a change in me, a marvelous change in me. Listen, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, many regrets from some very dark days. But when I open my heart to you,